Inside NASCAR, a weekly 30-minute look into the world's most popular form of auto racing. Inside NASCAR takes you behind the scenes with up-to-the-minute feature stories and interviews. Now here's two-time Grand National Champion and Stock Car Hall of Famer, Ned Jarett.
Welcome to Inside NASCAR. This week we're in Atlanta, Georgia, where the Coca-Cola 500 NASCAR Winston Cup race was run. We'll have highlights of that race. We're going back to Daytona. I'll bet a lot of you race fans, especially you young ones, didn't know that they raced on the beach there, on the sand. We have some footage of some of those races and some exciting interviews. We'll take a look at the inspection in NASCAR, what the drivers and teams have to go through before they take their cars on the track. The attendance in NASCAR Winston Cup racing continues to grow. There are reasons for it. We'll take a look at why and how much it has grown, and we'll have the latest in the NASCAR news and take a look at the upcoming races at Martinsville. All of that and more coming up. The NASCAR Winston Cup teams had a weekend off after Rockingham. Then they came to the mile-and-a-half Atlanta International Raceway for the Coca-Cola 500. This was one of my favorite tracks. I won my first super speedway event here in 1964. It's a unique track, a mile-and-a-half in length. Each turn takes up a half a mile. That means each straightaway is only a quarter of a mile in length. So it puts a lot of strain, physical strain, on the drivers, and it also puts a premium on the handling qualities of the car, as Mark Allen found out in this report on the highlights of the Coca-Cola 500.
The main point of interest in the Coca-Cola 500 was what effect Bill Elliott's fractured left leg would have on his driving. Though Jody Ridley stood by to relieve Elliott in the number 9 Ford, the home state favorite not only hung tough, but by the 240-mile point had lapped all but 3 cars. Number 5 Geoff Bodine was about to be put a lap down when number 7 Kyle Petty spun in turn 2 for only the event's second caution. Of the day's total 6 yellow flags, the most significant was waved just past the halfway point for outside pole sitter number 27 Tim Richmond, whose engine let go as he was still in contention. For the next 150 miles, number 28 K.O. Yarborough, also in a Ford, began pulling away from Elliott, whose leg was becoming increasingly painful along with ill handling. If Yarborough didn't break, it was his race. But 72 laps from his 7th Coca-Cola 500 win, Yarborough made a hard left turn into the garage with a blown engine. That put Elliott back on top, but number 11 Darrell Waltrip was the fastest car running, having unlapped himself. A late caution put him in Elliott's mirror on the restart, but several laps later, Waltrip's engine called it quits, leaving Bodine and pole sitter Neil Bonnet to chase down the Coors Melling machine. With Waltrip out, Elliott was able to hold off Bodine for a 2.5-second victory. Elliott becomes the first driver to win 2 Winston Cup races this season and moves up to 5th in the seasonal points battle. From the Atlanta International Raceway, this is Mark Allen reporting. So after 4 Winston Cup events, the new points leader is Geoff Bodine, who has 2 runner-up finishes thus far. Then it's Neil Bonnet, Terry Labonte, Darrell Waltrip, and as we mentioned a moment ago, Bill Elliott climbs to 5th. Then Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, Lake Speed, Bobby Hillin Jr., and Kyle Petty round out the top 10. Ricky Rudd is 11th, followed by Rusty Wallace, Bobby Allison, Ron Bouchard, and Lenny Pond in 15th. Richard Petty is 16th, then it's Greg Sachs, Tim Richmond, Ken Schrader, and a tie for 20th between Clark Dwyer and Jimmy Means.
Now that we're up to date on the Winston Cup point standings, let's dip into the NASCAR mailbox and see what questions you, the fans, want answered. Jimmy Mills of Martinsville, Virginia writes, why are the Pontiac Grand Prix not as competitive on the short tracks as the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS and the Ford Thunderbird? We put that question to last year's rookie winner, Rusty Wallace.
Well, Jimmy, I think the Pontiacs are competitive. It's just that we just had a lot of bad luck right now. And if you remember last year, Tim Richmond won the first race at Wilkesboro, and then he came back the first race at Richmond, almost won the race in a Pontiac. So the Pontiacs are definitely competitive. It's just that we've had some bad luck, and one of these days we'll put it all together and pull a win off in a Pontiac.
Edwin Hauser of Fifetown, North Carolina writes, do such drivers as Cale Yarborough and Richard Petty give signals to each other during a race, which means let's draft together? And if they do give those signals, what are they? Do all drivers understand them? What happens when they make pit stops? Do they plan pit stops together so that they can be together when they go back out on the racetrack? We put that question to former NASCAR Winston Cup champion Cale Yarborough.
Edwin, there are times when two cars can draft very well together. And when that situation presents itself on the racetrack, you usually know it. If you get two cars running together and you find out that you can run quicker, hooked up together, then maybe I'll give the man behind me a motion to hook up and let's go, or he may give me a hand signal in front of me that he thinks that we can run better together. Now, sometimes we have to change positions on the racetrack due to overheating. So when this happens, the man in front usually watches his mirror, and if he sees a man making a bid to go to the front, sometimes he lets him go because he knows that he may be running into a heating problem. As far as having this predetermined before a race starts, I don't think this ever happens. It always occurs during a race. As far as the pit stops themselves, we know exactly how far we can go on a tank of fuel, and when that time comes, we have to stop, no matter where the other car is. But usually, if you're drafting with somebody and you make a pit stop, even if he runs a few laps further, you'll come back out pretty close to the same position, and you presume you're drafting the situation again.
Well, Jimmy and Edwin, since your questions were used, you get a one-year free subscription to Grand National Scene. We know that you'll enjoy this paper. Everyone who writes to Inside NASCAR gets a free gift. Write to Inside NASCAR, Box 240-417, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28224. That's Box 240-417, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28224. If you have a favorite driver that you would like to ask a question, shoot it to us, and we'll go right to that driver to get the answer, because you, the fans, are what helps make this sport so successful. And it is very successful, as Steve Byrnes reports.
Last year, over 1.5 million of us fans came to see NASCAR racing at tracks like this one, the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The attendance figures up over 1983. Now, the most significant thing about the increased attendance is not the number of fans coming to the races, it's who is coming to the races. The good old boy redneck image just doesn't hold true anymore. Ask somebody who knows.
As time progressed, we're getting more and more of a situation where we get family involvement. You get one family and they'll have 3 or 4 different people they pull for, and they come to the race and they all argue about the race, and you know, it creates interest in the thing, and the fans are the ones that make the ball game work. Without the fans, then there wouldn't be any racing as we know it today.
It's that simple. Without fans, there would be no races, no sponsors, and no advertising. Why has the sport become so popular? Humpy Wheeler, the president and general manager of the Charlotte Motor Speedway, says the appeal is pretty obvious.
It's pro football on wheels, that's all it is, and people are now beginning to recognize and understand what we're doing, and there's a lot more to it than just meets the eye. The people can get involved, the athletes are very easy to get to, they don't hide in the locker room, they're out there where everybody can see them, they sign autographs, they don't carry attaché cases. So far, we don't have any of them sniffing the white stuff. They present a real all-American image, and the American people are responding to it.
The sport has become increasingly sophisticated. The Charlotte Motor Speedway has all the comforts of home. In fact, it is home for those who live in the first-turn condominiums. Many tracks have made life at the races more comfortable for us fans, and Humpy says that's why the sport has taken off.
The big growth, and the one that's very seldom brought out, is women. In 1975, about 11% of the people coming to Charlotte Motor Speedway were women. This year, it's up to almost 30%. And that is the real key test of any sport. Do women like it? Will they come out? Is there enough there to really sink their teeth in? And that's the strongest growth area there is.
Attendance has dropped for many professional sports. Look at the NBA and the USFL. The message has come out loud and clear. We as fans have become smarter with our entertainment dollars, and it seems that NASCAR has been listening.
Well, it's on a roll, Steve, and all indications are that it's going to continue to go up and up. The Charlotte Motor Speedway is a classic example of the improvements that have been made in the facilities, which in my opinion has helped the growth of the sport. But it hasn't always been that way. We're going back to the old days of the beach course racing at Daytona, the birthplace of speed, and boy, there's some stories that came out of that place. We think that you're going to enjoy the segment on the old beach course right after this.
This is a test that packs 30,000 miles of highway driving into a single afternoon. The 2-mile-long beach straightaway ends in a tight turn onto the backstretch. 2 miles to go, and the green flag is waving. This NASCAR. The yellow caution flag still holding them. There's the green. The race is on as 28 cars roar through the hairpin south turn, heading for the beach straightaway. There's a spin, and the yellow flag warns all of the starters. 2 cars are stalled in the middle of the south turn as the other cars maneuver past. A terrific show of car control.
Daytona Beach is known as the birthplace of speed. In the early 1900s, the beach was used for speed testing by pioneers like Henry Ford. Bill France and NASCAR began racing on the beach right after World War II. The thrills and spills continued there until 1958.
It was really a great different era, and from that we've now moved to what are now the super speedways. But all the super speedways now in existence can really look back to that beach course as where they came from. This was the starting point for the sport as we know it. And a 4.2-mile course, 2 miles of beach, 2 miles of 2-lane blacktop, and 2 10th-mile turns. Now, I can remember down there where the old south turn was, down by the lighthouse, that the scoring stand was outside up on almost like stilts, telephone poles really, and there was a small grandstand on the inside of the turn, and that was about the only thing. And when they'd start on the beach and drive those 2 miles up the beach, and watching from the scoring stand, it looked like an invasion force hitting, because everybody down there watching the start, then they'd all come across the dunes over and watch them come down the blacktop. They'd run out in the water to try to cool the brakes and the radiators off. And sometimes they'd not have a chance to really get the brakes cool enough coming back down that blacktop. They'd come right on down, they'd have no brakes going the turn, come and just sail up the turn and right over and just down the other side. One, I think it was either Buck Baker or Buck Gantz came flying in one time and hit the brakes, and there was nothing there. And went flipping out, came over and started rolling. We ran over to him. How many times did you go over? He said, I don't know, I was too busy counting the palmettos going by.
State Road A1A runs along the Florida coastline. Where race cars once came sliding into the south turn, cars today can only head inland.
Tim Flock's Mercury leads the pack out of the south turn onto the beach. Staley's coming second.
Tim Flock was one of the early heroes of NASCAR. Today, he works for the Charlotte Motor Speedway. He won 40 races during his Grand National career, 3 of them coming at the beach.
I will always believe that the old Daytona Beach road course was something that should have never closed down. We had more fun down there running down the beach. It was 4 3/10 miles around that road course, 2 miles on A1A highway and 2 3/10 miles down the beach. We had a lot of fun running down the beach with the ocean in the background. It was really scenic.
Tim Flock in the lead keeps to a steady, powerful pace as the car responds beautifully to his demands.
The beach course gave way to the Daytona International Speedway in 1959. The sands of time had run out. Technology and asphalt replaced sand dunes and seagulls.
Bill France more or less had to take it down. That race course was all palmetto bushes for 2 miles down A1A, and people started building motels down through there. And I think there was 2 or 3 motels built, and the people would run back and forth across the race course itself, and they couldn't judge us running like 139, 145 miles an hour. And some of them got real close to getting hit, and especially some guy might be drinking 3 or 4 beers, and he couldn't tell or couldn't judge he was coming at him that fast. He's going over to see his neighbor across the road, and it got real close there. So I think the city of Daytona told Bill that he's going to have to move the race course from the beach, and that's when you built the big Daytona International Speedway.
He's moving up to the checkered flag. Tim Mercury wins in record time.
It was just real unique to run it, and I think that's why the people came down there so much. We've had crowds come out of Atlanta and North Carolina, South Carolina, and they would be the whole length of the beach, Steve. I'm talking about 8 and 10 deep. And the turns were built up. They were real sharp turns. I think Bill got some motor graders and put some coral rock. The turns were banked about 6 degrees is all the bank there was. And he built it out of this hard coral rock. But I don't think you'll ever see a racetrack as unique as Daytona Beach, the old beach course.
Tim Fox, Billy Myers, the men of the Mercury division have proven their dreams at Daytona Beach.
What with all the different paint jobs, these cars don't look that much alike, but they really are quite similar underneath the pretty rainbow of colors, and that's because they have to be. Now, before any of these cars roll down onto the starting line, they have to go through an inspection process. They do this because they don't want one team to have an unfair advantage. To make sure that one team doesn't have an unfair edge, NASCAR officials will go over the cars with a fine-tooth comb. The inspection process is the same from week to week. NASCAR has 5 different inspection teams, and each team is responsible for one specific area.
One group goes under the car to check underneath the car and check the body, roll bars, frames, this type thing. Another group removes the fuel cell, checks the fuel cell, fuel lines, this type of thing. Have another group to pump the engine to see that the proper size is there. Another guy takes care of the carburation. It's a 4-man team that uses the Tempest, the height bar, weight, and things of that nature.
Cars have been disqualified before a race, but the infractions usually aren't that bad. All of the teams know what rules to play by. What's the most common problem what's the thing that you may catch the most often of guys coming in for inspection?
Oh, probably they're having to change some part of the body where they stretch the rules just a tiny bit.
If they change the body a little bit, is that something that they can correct in enough time to get ready to race?
Oh, yes. And very seldom we have to load a car. We had one car in Daytona Beach that was too far out. Of course, we had to load that one back up. But normally it's just small things that can be corrected within an hour or so.
The top finishers must also go through inspection to make sure there hasn't been any tampering during the race, and that inspection is every bit as thorough. Steve Byrnes reporting for Inside NASCAR.
They used to call it the wildest doubleheader in racing. That's at Martinsville, Virginia. Now, I guess it'll be the wildest tripleheader in racing. They not only have the modified and the sportsman cars, now they've added the late model stocks. And going back to the modifieds this weekend is Greg Sachs, who had a lot of success at Martinsville and just about every kind of modified racing throughout the Northeast. I guess it's fun, Greg, to go back and run those cars.
Well, it sure is, Ned. It's a big challenge, too, because that circuit is really getting tight these days.
Now, you've been running the 3,700-pound Winston Cup cars for a couple of years. Not too much modified racing. Do you have to make a big adjustment to go back to those lighter, more powerful cars?
Well, yes, you do, because especially at Martinsville. When you go down into that first turn with these 3,700-pound cars, you've really got to stop them and get into that turn. I'll go out there the first couple laps, and before I know it, some of these younger guys in these modifieds just be blowing my doors away going into the turn. You've got to really get back with the program to run that light car again.
Geoff Bodine is another of the NASCAR Winston Cup drivers who will be racing at Martinsville, but he'll be racing in the Sportsman as opposed to the modifieds that Greg Sachs will be running in. Of course, Geoff has won in both divisions on that half-a-mile track, and that looked like fun to you, Geoff.
Well, it is a lot of fun, Ned. We really enjoy going back to Martinsville, racing with the modifieds and the late models. We get to see a lot of people from the north that we don't get to see all year long. Now that we're down here racing Grand National cars, that's a lot of fun for us. They enjoy seeing us race. We enjoy racing for them. And the late model class is a good division. It's very competitive. I have won some races there. We seem to run well at Martinsville. It's been a good track for us, and we think we have a good car this time. It's the same car we had last year, which we were on the pole with. So we're really looking forward to going back to Martinsville.
Well, fans, I don't think there's any question but what you'll see some exciting racing. Doesn't matter which division you like. Here's the latest news. Darrell Waltrip said this week he will build shops and field his own team after his contract with Junior Johnson and Budweiser runs out after the 1986 NASCAR Winston Cup season. Dick Brooks and Petty Enterprises have split up after 3 unsuccessful races. No word yet on plans for either party. Warner Hodgdon was the highest bidder on March 15th when the Nashville, Tennessee track lease was auctioned off. He bid $260,000, but he didn't meet the deadline in putting up the money, so the bid went to attorney Gary Baker, who had bid $259,000. NASCAR stands firm on not sanctioning races at Nashville this year. Don Hume has replaced Lenny Pond in the James Hilton car. Hume will run for the Champion Spark Plug Rookie of the Year honors with sponsorship from Cleaner Hands product. While Hume is happy about new sponsorship, veteran J.D. McDuffie has lost the biggest sponsorship he ever had. The Engine Restore people informed him this week they had bid off more than they could chew and would have to withdraw from the sponsorship deal. We understand General Cigar will also come off of the car number 70. Restore also withdrew as an associate sponsor on the Dale Jarrett Sportsman car. Our time's up. Thanks for joining us this week. Next week, we'll have highlights of the triple header from Martinsville, Virginia, where there's always plenty of action on that half-a-mile track. We'll go inside the shops of Waddell Wilson to see how race cars are built. We'll take a look at one of the rising stars on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit, Bobby Hillin Jr. Do race drivers have enough insurance? We'll address that subject with Bobby Allison, all on Inside NASCAR next week. Join us.
Ground transportation for Inside NASCAR provided by Choo Choo Custom Vans, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Inside NASCAR's high-performance camera car provided by Oldsmobile.